I am Victoria Wargo, a special education teacher in the autism program at Riverside School in Princeton, New Jersey. The topic I'm going to be discussing is desensitization strategies. Have you ever said or experienced any of the following? Our family can't go out to restaurants. He will only wear a specific shirt or pair of socks. He won't use a public restroom. We have challenges with personal care, bathing, dressing, maybe even toothbrushing. He only wants to sit in a shopping cart. I can't trim his nails. He won't let me cut his hair. Having the doctor or dentist examine my child is a challenge. She won't sleep in her bed. My child runs away from me when we are in the community. This presentation will provide parents with tools and strategies to work with their child to desensitize them to activities and personal care routines that are a challenge. So when you're considering the things that you want to work on or the challenging skills or areas for your child, where do you start? When we discuss beginning with parents, we always say to prioritize and to select just 1 to 2 goals to work on at a time. You don't want to overwhelm yourself or your child, and you want to be successful. So if you pick just 1 to 2 things to work on at a time, you're going to have a lot more success and you're going to be a lot less stressed in the process. The next thing we always say is to do a task analysis. And basically, a task analysis is where you take a large skill that you want to work on or a large behavior, a large area that you want to work on, and you want to break it down into tiny steps. And you work on this skill step by step by step, and you continue to build throughout, which will help you get to that giant goal. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Also, you want to pick times where you can commit to working on the goal. Consistency is key. Maybe you can't work on that skill or that part of the skill every single day, but you can commit to working on it every single Saturday. Then that's when you do it. Sometimes I have parents who say, I want to work on dressing, but in the mornings, it's just too chaotic. We have to get all the kids ready and fed and get them out the door onto the bus. And I say, that's okay, but can you commit to doing it at night? Or can you commit to every Saturday night working on that skill? When you can commit to something, you can be consistent and then you can be successful. So how do I build a skill or reduce a behavior? We have 5 components that will help you with strategies to get through working on these. The first one we're going to talk about is small steps. The second one is have a plan. The third one, super important, reinforcement, reinforcement, reinforcement. Number 4, consistency and the frequency at which you're going to work through the skill or the behavior. And number 5, patience. And I'm going to go to in-depth components for each of these areas coming up. So the first area we're going to say is take small steps. The key to really building or reducing a behavior is small steps. That's where this task analysis that I discussed a few moments ago comes into play. If you break down a task into smaller parts, it's going to be much more manageable for everyone. Here's a fantastic example. If your goal is to have your child go food shopping without a meltdown, I would not recommend taking them on a 2-hour shopping trip where you're trying to get your groceries for the whole week. In fact, I would not recommend going on a Saturday or a Sunday. I don't even like to go to the grocery store on a Saturday or a Sunday because they are way too busy and overwhelming. So a small step would be take them to the grocery store for just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then you can build on their success by adding time to the shopping trip. I'm actually going to discuss a shopping trip scenario later on in the presentation, but this is what we mean when we say take small steps. The next part is have a plan. So when teaching a skill or reducing a behavior, make sure that you have a plan. So the things that this includes are knowing exactly what your target behavior is. You want to identify what you want to work on. I want to work on dressing. I want to work on shopping. I want to work on trimming my child's nails. Know exactly what your target is so you can be very focused about that. And then you're going to go ahead and, we talked about already, break it down into those smaller steps. So a couple examples that I have up on this slide is if you're working on toothbrushing, you're not going to focus on every single one of the steps, but maybe the first thing you're going to do is just have them get their toothbrush and their toothpaste. And then you're going to prompt your child through the rest of brushing their teeth, and you can build on that. Maybe a goal is going to church. Well, it's going to be hard for them to be expected to sit for 60 minutes. But maybe you start with just the last 5 minutes of the worship service so your child ends with everybody else, and then you can build up their tolerance and maybe go the last 10 minutes and then the last 15 minutes and build on that. That's part of having your plan. Maybe going to the dentist office is a challenge. So maybe you just practice driving to the dentist office and sitting in the waiting room before getting used to that space before you actually have an appointment. The next area of having a plan is have a plan when things or if things go wrong. For example, maybe you're working on going shopping without a meltdown, but your child does have a meltdown when you're working on this skill. What is your plan? So when we say have a plan for if things go wrong, think about all the things that could possibly be a challenge when you're working on this and have a plan for how you're going to respond to it. The next thing that's really important, I'm going to talk about this at a later slide, is having reinforcement ready for when things go right. And I'll explain that in more detail. And of course, practice, practice, practice. We want to be as consistent as possible. I said that a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go into that next, which is where it leads me to consistency. When building a skill, you must be consistent and you must practice frequently. New skills have to be practiced often or they will not be internalized. And when practicing each skill, it's really important to be consistent with how you're responding and with your language because we want your child to know what to expect. What's also important is when you're practicing and you have your response to the correct behavior and incorrect behavior is we'd like it to be consistent. Make sure it's consistent with all those who are going to work on the behavior. So if mom and dad are both going to be working on a skill or a behavior, make sure that you guys discuss exactly how you're responding to the correct and the incorrect behavior so that you guys are consistent, so the child is getting consistent and clear messages so they know what to expect. That's super key for being consistent. But again, part of that is really making sure that you take the time to practice. Like I said earlier, if you can do it every day, awesome. But if you can't do it every day, then pick a time when you can commit to it. Maybe you say, you know what, I can do 5 minutes every night. I can work on this for 5 minutes every night. And again, maybe it's an hour every Sunday, but whatever it is, practice, practice, practice. The next thing we're going to talk about is reinforcement. And of course, at the top of this slide, it says reinforcement. Reinforcement, reinforcement. It is so super important to make sure that you're reinforcing your child when you're working through behaviors and skills and trying to get through things like maybe haircuts or going to the grocery store or brushing their teeth. To increase a skill or behavior, it has to be reinforced. Now, what's really important is reinforcement may look different for every child. Whatever you offer, it has to be motivating for your child, because if it's not motivating, it's not reinforcement and it's not going to help that behavior to change. Some things that reinforcement might be, perhaps a preferred activity, a game, going biking, maybe going to a favorite place, possibly electronics. Maybe it's a preferred food treat, candy or chips, maybe even a slice of pizza. Perhaps it's spending time with a preferred person, or it's a preferred sensory activity such as shaving cream or a sand toy or a water table. Whatever it is, make sure that you are reinforcing your child. And sometimes I'll say to parents, what a quick reinforcer is always helpful when you're trying to work through larger tasks and building on. So if you are going through a grocery store, sometimes I say have maybe your child's favorite thing is mini M&Ms. Have a little baggie of those mini M&Ms right in your pocket. Don't wait till you get to the car. So this way, as you're going through it and your child might push the cart, you're doing a great job pushing the cart. Here's an M&M. You did a great job picking up the 3 things that we had on our list. Here we go. Here's another M&M. Trying to build that reinforcement and make it a positive and successful experience will help it along the way. The next thing, and a really important thing for you to remember, is be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day. That's an old saying, but it's very apropos for what we're talking about right now. Some skills, they take time to develop and grow. When you're doing these tiny little steps that lead to a large task, maybe you can get through it in 1 or 2 tries. I've had some families that takes 2 to 3 years for some larger skills to get work done. Going to the dentist could be really challenging for some kids. It takes time. Be patient. Don't give up because things don't change overnight. We have to, again, be patient. Always keep yourself focused on that long-term goal. That's going to continue to give you the drive to get there. I'm going to go over 2 scenarios to kind of help break down everything I discussed in terms of how you can go about taking those steps to get to your large goal. So the first scenario is a haircut. Haircuts can be a challenge. It can be a sensory overload for some kiddos. One approach that's been successful has been to slowly desensitize a child to getting their haircut. So the first way you can start is you can practice at home. Maybe you're going to pretend to be the hairdresser, have your child sit in a chair with a towel around their shoulders to emulate a cape, and then you just reinforce that, hey, great job sitting in your chair and having a towel on your shoulders. And then maybe you practice that a few times. And maybe once they can handle that, then you say, okay, look, I want you to touch these scissors. I want you to touch this buzzer. It's okay. Don't be scared. And then you're going to reinforce that. And maybe once they can handle touching and seeing the buzzer and handle sitting in a chair with a towel around their shoulders, then you can say, okay, now I can build on this. Maybe the next step is going to be, I'm going to practice touching my child's hair in the same way that a hairdresser would. And then we're going to reinforce that. And once your child can handle that, maybe the next step is to practice actually snipping or buzzing a tiny bit of hair and then reinforce, hey, great job. I know that you're working so hard. Here's your iPad for 1 minute. Oh, great job. You did so awesome. I have your favorite chips ready for you. Here's a tiny piece of a chip. You're going to increase the amount of time spent in the chair and the amount of the haircut. Continue to reinforce. And now maybe you're just about ready to bring your child to the hairdresser. But we're going to start that without getting a haircut. So the first time we're just going to go in there and have them sit in a chair. Reinforce the good behavior. Hey, that was awesome. We'll come back again soon. Maybe the next time they sit in a chair and wear the cape. Maybe then you keep practicing until they're feeling okay, and then they can sit and get used to the hairdresser touching their hair and reinforce that. Have them maybe listening to the buzzer or hearing the scissors snip. Have the hairdresser snip 1 or 2 pieces, and then again, increase the amount of time spent in the chair and the amount of haircut until we're ready for a successful haircut. And always, again, have that reinforcer ready. Be patient. Have a plan. Be consistent. Practice, practice, practice. Another scenario I'll talk about is food shopping. I've worked on this with many, many, many families. Shopping can be stressful. Meltdowns during shopping trips can make it feel impossible. So again, your key, take those small steps towards your bigger goal. Start small. You might need to practice and build up a tolerance before you could take your child for a full shopping trip. Maybe you can't even go to the grocery store yet. Maybe you start even smaller and say, you know what? We're going to go to CVS. We're going to walk in. I'm going to show him a picture of his favorite candy. And I'm going to say, look, let's go get Skittles. He's going to walk in, pick up the Skittles. You're going to pay for the Skittles and walk out. That's maybe where you need to start for a while. Practice that, build up the tolerance, and then maybe you get to the grocery store. Perhaps you want to start by having your child get a shopping cart and just walk together for 5 minutes and just leave without buying anything. You could go frequently. And when you have success, the next time you go, you can add more and more items. Here's a fantastic way, though. Get your child involved. Have them push the cart. Have them find items. Make a list. Have them check it off. You can take a picture list and have them cross things out. You can have your child help scan things, help bag things, help them practice how to pay if it's appropriate, because you're going to be teaching an important life skill in addition to helping your family's shopping experience be much more seamless. In the end, planning these things, behavior change, working through challenging times and behaviors and goals, it might seem impossible. It might be scary. It's gonna be hard. There's no question. It's okay if your child cries, and it's okay if once in a while you might cry too. But remember this: take those baby steps. Behavior change takes time. I cannot promise you that any of this will be easy, but what I can absolutely guarantee you is that every bit of work that you put in right now will change your life today and tomorrow, and that is what's going to get you through this time. Remember, a little progress each day adds up to very big results. Thank you.